What's going on, everybody? You can call me Kennerz, and this is going to be the first episode of my series, PolyJAMourous, where I talk about music that I usually like but occasionally don't. For the first episode, I really wanted to talk about my favorite album by at least one of my favorite artists, and that, everybody, is Amaryllis by Shinedown. So if you didn't see the intro video to PolyJAMourous, just as a quick summary, I'm going to be looking into some of Shinedown's history since I'm doing a first video in regards to a new artist, and then I'm going to go into the album as a whole and then talk about my favorite songs. Without further ado, here is some of Shinedown's history. So Shinedown started back in 2001 in Jacksonville, Florida, when the lead singer Brent got dropped from the label with his previous band, Dreve, back in his hometown of Knoxville, Tennessee. Although Atlantic didn't want to keep Dreve, they did see something in Brent specifically, and they signed him onto a development deal where they would not only help him hone his skills as a songwriter, but they would also help him form a new band of his own, which would later become Shinedown. So the first person to join Shinedown was the bassist Brad Stewart. Him and Brent had a mutual friend named Pete Thornton, who was a music producer. They got introduced, and Brad became the first, I guess technically second member of Shinedown. After Brad joined, Brent and him both started working on some material together, and the studio they were working at, they actually knew the lady who owned it, who happened to be engaged to Jason Todd, who would end up becoming the guitarist for Shinedown. And last but most certainly not least, we have the drummer Barry Kirch, who was actually auditioning for the role of drummer. He was the seventh person to audition, and 7, I guess, ended up being a lucky number here as he was clearly the one to get the job. So once everything was put together, Shinedown was formed. They released their first record, Leave a Whisper, on May 27th, 2003. This particular record would have hits such as Life from the Inside and 45, and later on the deluxe edition, they would have their cover of Leonard Skinner's Simple Man. Under this particular lineup, Shinedown released one more record called Us and Them on October 4th, 2003, and it would be during the development of their next record, Sound of Madness, where the band would be going through some more difficult times. At this time, Brent was having some issues with both Brad and Jason. There was a lot of tension in the band, and Brad and Jason both ended up getting fired from Shinedown. And to anybody wondering, Brad and Jason are doing just fine. There's no animosity between them and the guys. I think it was back in 2016, Brad actually ended up becoming the bassist for the band Saliva, who's got some pretty badass songs from what I've heard. And Jason ended up being part of another band called Fuel. From what I saw, he ended up releasing a record or two under them before leaving them to start his own solo career. So after Brad and Jason were kicked out of the band, this is where Zach and Eric came into play. Zach was originally a touring guitarist for the band who got, obviously moved to a more permanent spot. And Eric's intro to the band, I think, was a little bit more of a unique one.
I met Brent and Barry and Jason Todd when they were writing songs for the Sound of Madness. So I've been a songwriter and record producer, and Steve Robertson had sent Brent to work with me. I was actually good friends with a guy named Rick Beata who had produced some songs on Leave a Whisper, I believe,
Yep.
and wrote some songs on Leave a Whisper. I called Rick. I'm like, what's this cat like, man? He goes, oh man, he's a great guy, but he's really different. That's all he would tell me. So I go to pick Brent up at. There's a Holiday Inn in Charleston, South Carolina that's round. It looks just like it's the same round building that you see on the 405 in Los Angeles. Like there are a few of them around the country.
Identical.
It's this round building. And I remember I pulled up to pick him up, and he came out, got in the car, and we drove straight to a bar and got completely hammered on Jägermeister.
Yep.
No, but we spent a few days writing songs, and actually at the time, man, I could see the dysfunction in the band. I wasn't really sure about it at that point. I got a call again a couple of months later about doing an audition, and I went down to Orlando and got in a room and with the 3 gentlemen that I play with now, and never looked back.
So I've seen Brent state in multiple interviews that if it weren't for Zach and Eric, Shinedown probably wouldn't even be a thing today. So he will tell you they quite literally saved the band. In their now over 20-year career, Shinedown has released 7 albums and are currently working on an 8th at the time of this recording. They've had many #1 singles, and along with everything they've done in the music world, they also like to do a lot of charity work. If you check their website, then they will show you a ton of charities that they're partnered with. They do a lot of stuff in the music world. They do a lot of charity work, just all around good bunch of guys, and I am happy to support them. And that's all I've got to say on their history, so I guess on to Amaryllis. So Amaryllis was released on March 27th, 2012, and this was the first record to be completely made by the new lineup. It consists of 12 tracks with singles such as Bully and Enemies. And I really want to give a quick shout out to Enemies because that is the best music video I've seen so far in my life. It has a really good mix of funny and serious. I think the guys did a fantastic job acting. If you're interested in watching new music videos, I go give that one some love. So one thing Shinedown has said multiple times that they like to do is obviously, you know, they like to have a certain sound to each of their records where you know it's Shinedown. But they also like to do something a little bit different with each record because they never want to make the same album twice. What I remember them saying with this record was they really wanted to have more of a cinematic sound to it. So some of the songs are supposed to have a certain grandeur to them. Honestly, I think in terms of sound, this one has one of the more unique sets of tracks. And the reason why I say that is I feel like what Shinedown did with Amaryllis is kind of what they try to do with their albums in general, where each track on Amaryllis to me, all of it sounds like Shinedown, but I think each song really could stand on its own because for the most part, no two songs sound alike on Amaryllis. I don't think they tried to do that, but I think they did a pretty good job of doing that, if that makes sense. If you look at track 6, I'm Not Alright, I think I remember Eric saying specifically they wanted some sort of an orchestra on the 6th track to really give it that grand cinematic sound that they were going for. What I noticed with it is in terms of the lyrics and even the melody of it is it has a certain I don't give a shit attitude that I think is so funny. So I'm Not Alright I think has a certain fun or humorous sound to it that you really don't hear on the rest of the record. Yeah, Shinedown just hits all different kinds of sounds with Amaryllis. Looking at a general theme for Amaryllis, I did watch a track-by-track commentary for the album with Brent many months ago, and one thing I did notice was the kind of unifying theme for Amaryllis. I think for the most part it's just kind of beat you because I do notice there are quite a few songs on here that I think really speak to personal empowerment and just embracing who you are. So in terms of how the album did, at this point in their career, it had the best first week that any of their albums had to that point. Like, it did pretty well in some of the charts. I have the statistics here on my iPad. So it reached #1 on 3 different charts. That was the US Top Alternative Albums, US Top Hard Rock Albums, and the US Top Rock Albums. From what I could see, for the most part, Amaryllis did consistently well on most of the charts. Moving on to my favorite songs, the first one by a small margin to my first 2 are so damn close. I love them both so much. But if I had to pick a #1 favorite, I would probably have to go with Nowhere Kids. And the reason why is in terms of the melody, it's more of what I tend to be in the mood for. I just really like songs that go fast, that make me want to go fast, whether it be pushing it a little too hard on the treadmill or maybe pushing the speed limit a little bit. Melodically speaking, it's just more my preference. Now, I would like to say I would like to throw in clips of the songs here, but there is a little thing called copyright that will ding me, so I will just try to describe what I like about them as much as possible. So with Nowhere Kids, I noticed that the guitar kind of goes up and down almost like a wave. It's almost like I'm on some sort of audio roller coaster sort of thing. I think it gives a certain element of fun to Nowhere Kids that, like I said, you don't really hear on most of the album. Even I'm Not Alright, it has a certain fun and humor sound to it, but that one's like, that's a humorous kind of fun, not a I want to go fast kind of fun. I also really like the meaning of the song. So if you ask me, I would say Nowhere Kids was actually ahead of its time because back then it was calling out the effect that technology was having on kids specifically, but I think it's something that could really just apply to everybody nowadays. Even I'll admit, I'm a little bit more addicted to Instagram than I should be. I actually have a quote from Barry about Nowhere Kids. I'm just gonna read that here for y'all. It's about modern technology and kids getting lost in it. They don't go out and play anymore. You don't see them running around parks anymore. They're just tapping on their consoles all day long. But hey, we're as guilty. Although we're stuck on a bus, but kids should get off and walk, get out and see something. Kids often seem lost in this fake world. People on Facebook are really your friends. I got proper friends and I don't need a Facebook account. Which, although I do have a Facebook account, I must say, Mr. Kirch, preach. Without further ado, I think that's all I have to say on Nowhere Kids. So moving on to #2, it is Miracle. Very, very, very close second. I love these first 2 tracks so much. But Miracle, the thing that made it #2 was the sound of it. Still love it, obviously. The sound of Miracle is actually a little bit nostalgic to me because it felt like a little bit more of a modern version of some of the songs you might hear in the early 2000s. And the reason why I say that is one thing I've noticed in some of the early 2000s tracks, such as Complicated from Avril Lavigne or Michelle Branch's Everywhere, is there's an acoustic guitar present throughout the whole song. Even when the electric guitar comes in, the acoustic guitar might be a little bit more subdued, but it's still there. And that's what I noticed Miracle does with those same instruments. I really like that because of the modern nostalgic sound, for me at least. I thought it was really cool that the melody sounded like that. And as far as the meaning of the song goes, it is so ridiculously sweet. So to anybody who doesn't know, the lead singer Brent actually has a son. His name is Lyric, and this song is actually about him. You know, if anybody thinks I'm wrong here, please let me know. I don't always feel like I'm the most filtered. But one thing that I tend to notice a lot is romantic love. Out of any form of love, romantic love definitely tends to take priority over other forms of it. So for me, whenever I see something like this where it's about familial love, it just makes me so happy. Yeah, like I said, it could be wrong and I could just be missing a lot of familial love stuff. Obviously, you know, Frozen was big for that reason. But yeah, I feel like even in 2012, the sound of it was more unique, and definitely in terms of its meaning, it was more unique. Yeah, I just love it. Finally, last but not least, I would have to give my third favorite spot to Through the Ghost. I think the sound of it is just absolutely beautiful. I think, like, I noticed they throw some more orchestral instruments in there. I think there's a cello in there. I think they throw in some sort of, like, jingle bells almost. Like, when I'm listening to the bridge of the song, it sounds like jingle bells that they've got later in there. Just so little, I guess, magical touch to the song. You've got the acoustic guitar going through the whole song, and I don't really notice any drum beats. I could be wrong, but just thinking about the song now, because I'll admit I haven't listened to it for a while. The song is just soft, it's haunting, it has a reminiscent sound to it, and it is just overall absolutely gorgeous. I think I've heard most, if not all, of Shinedown's music, and just thinking about it now, I would probably say it's one of Shinedown's most beautiful tracks. I just love the emotions, and I love the sadness in it. And then the meaning of it, honestly, when I listened to the song at first and for a while, I just thought it was a pretty song, and that's why I liked it so much. But I didn't know what to make of the meaning of it, but after watching the commentary on it, I learned the song is actually about self-awareness, which I think is super cool, and I think it's something that all of us can't really get enough of, especially nowadays. I'm all for self-improvement, and kind of encouraging self-awareness is something that I'm always going to be about. And considering it's about self-awareness, like, I would like to think melodies and lyrics always go together, but that's not always the case. I'm a huge fan of another band called One OK Rock, and some of their earlier stuff, I swear the lyrics do not match the melody. I really like how well the melody and the lyrics match up together, because, let's face it, becoming more self-aware isn't always the easiest thing. You will have to go through some of your own shit, let's be honest here, and it can be depressing, it can be hard, and you're not always gonna feel good. And the sadness and the reminiscent sound of Through the Ghost, I think, go really well with those lyrics, with the meaning of it, and they just really complement one another, and they just made this absolutely beautiful song. I don't think I really have anything else to say on Through the Ghost. Just beautiful song, beautiful meaning, go check it out. So I think that's all I have to say on Amaryllis in general. So I hope this video was interesting to you. I hope you found it entertaining. I hope you found some good music from it. I will leave links to both Amaryllis as a whole and the songs that I mentioned specifically down in the description below. Go check out Shinedown, their stuff. They are phenomenal people, love them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you are, and I will see you all in the next episode of PolyJAMourous.